decision to real world impact. In this session, we will be covering how security teams can move beyond just making the right decisions and into actually acting on them faster and more effectively using AI-driven automation. We will go through the decision to action gap, real world use cases, how to measure the impact, and the key challenges to be aware of. So first, let's see what today's agenda is. So today's agenda is, before we get into the content, let me give you a clear picture of what today is going. So you know exactly what to expect from each section. We open with a quick recap of part one, from noise to decision. So everyone is starting from the same place, right? Whether you attended part one or are joining us fresh today. From there, we move into the core of part two. We start with the decision to action gap, the space between a good decision and an actual response, and why that gap is where most security operations lose control. We then go deeper into the execution challenge that create that gap and approach that closes it. That leads us into AI-driven response and automation, the architecture behind how decision become real-time action. We follow that with our live demo, so you will see the working in practice, not just in theory. Then we cover how to measure the impact, MTTR, efficiency, and risk reduction, because you cannot measure it, so you can't prove it. And we close with an honest look at the challenges and key takeaways, what makes this hard and what to do about it. So let's start with my intro. So hi everyone, I'm Vaibhav. I work as a SOC analyst. That means monitoring live environments, investigating real incidents, and working to make detection and response faster and more effective. I spend most of time in the space between an alert firing and a threat being contained, which is actually what today is about. My colleague covered part one, how AI helps security teams cut through noise and reach confident decisions. I'm picking up from that point and taking it further into what actually happens after the decision is made and what it takes to turn that decision into real world security impact. So let's first start with the recap. So in part one, we started with the hard truth, that is visibility exists, but clarity doesn't. So security teams had the data, log alerts, events, but no priority and no context and no clear direction. That was noise, and noise leads to delay. So AI changed that by doing four things: filtering the noise, correlating signals, enriching alerts with context, and giving the analyst confident to act. The outcome: high volume alerts to clear priorities and confident decisions. That was part one. But the decision is not the finish line. Today we answer what happens after, how fast we act, and what real impact looks like. So let's get into it. So the first thing is the decision to action gap. So in most security operation team, no immediate action follows. And the reason is not a lack of skill or intent, it is a process problem. Manual workflows, approval chains, tool switching, every step adds delay. And in security, time is the one resource you can't recover. Look at this timeline. Okay, so on the left, the decision is made. On the right, action is finally taken. Everything between is the gap. In manual environment, that gap is 4 to 8 hours, and that's a huge numbers I'm talking about. And throughout every one of those hours, the threat doesn't wait. It continues to evolve. It continues to expand. The damage that follows is not because the threat was undetected. It is because the response come too late. Now look at the both sides of the comparison, that is manual response or with AI automated. So manual response, alert fires, analyst is based, manual investigation, ticket approval, and then finally remediation. Okay. And with AI, AI-driven response, alert fires, context enriched automatically, risk confirmed, playbook triggers. Same alert, same decision quality, completely different outcome because of the response speed. So the gap between decision and action is where security posture breakdowns. Closing it, what the rest of his today is about. So let's move to next slide. That is from decision to action. So in slide 2, we established the gap, the space between a decision and an action where most organizations lose control. But the natural question is why that gap exists in the first place. It is not a knowledge problem. Like security teams know what to do. It's an execution problem. And it comes down to four specific barriers that exist in almost every manual security workflow. So the first barrier is manual investigation. Every alert, regardless of how clearly it has been prioritized, still require a human to manually review it before any response begins. That review takes time, and in high volume environment, that time adds up fast. So let's move to the second barrier is ticketing and approval dependencies. So before any action could be taken, a ticket must be open, right? A manager may need to approve it. Each of those dependencies was designed for accountability. But in security incident, every approval step is another window the threat is using. Okay. So the third barrier is multiple tool hands off. Detection happens in one platform, investigation in other. Response is third. Every time context move between tools, something gets lost. And the analyst has to rebuild the context from scratch. And that's a huge problem. There is no single execution layer connecting the decision to the action. The fourth barrier is the one that ties all three together is the absence of real-time execution. Without automation, every response depends on a human being available, logging in, working through a manual process. That dependencies means there will always be a gap, like always, always. So when these four barriers combines, they produce two outcomes that no security team can afford. The first one is increased response time. Hour passed before a threat is contained and a higher exposure window. The longer the threat remains active, the greater the risk of damage, data loss, and spread. These are not edge cases, they are default state of any security operation that has not been automated its response layer. So the good news is, and this is what the rest of is today is about, is that AI removes every single one of these four barriers. Not partially, not eventually, it replaces manual investigation with instant enrichment, approval chains with automated playbooks, tool handoffs with a unified response layer, and slow execution with real time. Let's move forward to next slide. That is AI-driven response and automation. So in the last slide, we identified four barriers, right? That turn good decision into slow responses. Now let's look at the solution and more importantly, exactly where in the security process that solution needs to be applied. So every security operation, regardless of size, industry, or tool set, goes through the same four stages. The first one is detect, identify the threat, surface the right signal from the noise. This is where part one focused. And AI has already transformed this stage significantly. So the second stage is validate and prioritize. AI enriches the alert with context, severity, risk score, and business impact. So your analyst has everything they need to make a confident call, right? The last one is act, contain and respond. Execute the response, isolate, block, contain based on the decision that just made. And is last one is impact. That is the outcome. The threat is stopped before it causes damage, data loss, or further spread. This is the stage that actually matters to your business. Now, here is where I want you to stop and think about your own environment. Most security teams are generally good at first two stages. Detection is improving, decision quality is moving. But the third stage, act, is where most teams are still operating manually. And if act is slow, impact suffers every time. Which brings us to the most important insight on this slide, that is detection doesn't equal protection. A perfect detection with 4-hour response is not a security. It is a documented failure. Knowing a threat exists in your environment and not stopping it in time, it's not a win. So, action equals protection. The speed and effectiveness of your response is what determines the real world outcome, not the quality of your detection and all, not the accuracy of your decision alone. Both of those things only matter if the action that follows is fast enough. Okay, so let's move forward to our demo. So everything we have discussed today, the gap, the barriers, the response framework, I want to show you all it in a live environment right now, which how fast we move from a raw investigation to a complete response plan. So here are our search bars, AI agent. So in manual workflow, investigating a suspicious IP take an analyst significant time, like pulling logs, cross-referencing thread data, building a timeline. Manually across multiple tools, what happen here. So let's just give the command to the AI, investigate IP plus 24 hours. So it basically did. It analyzes all. It gives me the threat assessment, attack timeline, severity breakdown, key indicators, comparison with past investigations, and that's all. Like all the information you need, it's here with just only one command. I don't have to go through like single different command every time. Just one command and I have all the data. Okay, so look at what just came back. Severity level, full attack timeline, every event tied up to IP that across is like 24 hours and reached is structured and summarized in one output. No tool switching, no manual log correction, no waiting. This is the detection and decision stage. Then the AI has not shown what has happened. It has told us what it means, how serious it is, and built the full picture automatically. Now we move from decision to the action. So there it is, a complete step-by-step response plan. So look at my command. So based on the analysis, what is the recommended response for critical attacks? I did for critical steps, but you can do either a particular vulnerability, particular IP. So you got the idea. So give me a clear step-by-step action plan. So look here. Generated directly from the investigation we just done. No approval chain, no ticket waiting in a queue, no handoff between platform. Remember what we said. Detection does not equal protection. Action equal protection. What you are looking at right now is action. The AI took the investigation, analyzed the risk, and produced a complete response plan that an analyst can execute immediately. Like here it is. Immediate isolation, or you can block the source IP, verify and patch vulnerability, forensic investigation, monitoring and alerting, documenting finding, and updating playbooks. And critically, the analyst is still in control. The AI did the heavy lifting. The analyst reviews it, makes the final call, and acts. This is not over automation. This is exactly human and AI collaboration we talked about. So what I just did with two commands, that is all took to go from a suspicious IP to a full investigation to a complete response plan. Think about what that means for MTTR. Think about what that means for analyst time. Think about what that means for the gap we drew on that slide. This is AI in security operation moving from decision to real world impact, not in theory, right here. So let's move to the next slide. That is measuring security impact, like I talked about in the previous slide. That is MTTR. So let's talk about it. So we looked at the problem, we have looked at the solution. Now the question that everyone will eventually face is how do you prove it is working, right? The answer is measurement. And here are two layers to measure what is happening inside your operation and what that means for your business. So on the operational side, three matrices tell you whether your security response is improving. So the first one is MTTR, that is mean time to respond. So this is the time between a confirmed threat and a full containment. It is direct measure of how fast your response layer is working. With AI-driven automation, teams are constantly seeing MTTR fall by 60 to 75%. That's a huge number. This is not a marginal improvement. That is a fundamental shift in response speed. So the second one is false positive rate. If your analysts are spending half their time investigating alerts that turns out to be nothing. That is half their capacity lose to noise. AI enrichment and correlations reduce false positives significantly, giving your team back the time and focus they need for real threats. And the third one is alert handling efficiency. How many alerts can your team accurately process and respond per day? Automation multiplies this number not by working your team harder, but by manually stepping that slows each alert down. So now we look at the operational side. Now look at the business impact. Because these operational improvements do not exist in isolation, they translate directly into outcomes your leadership cares about. So the first one is reduce breach impact. The faster you contain a threat, the smaller the damage window, right? Less data exposed, less financial cost, less reputational risk. So the next one is improved resource utilization. Your analysts are your most valuable asset. When AI handles the repetitive and the routine task, your team focuses on the work that actually requires human judgment. Same headcount, dramatically more capability. And the last one is faster containment. These threats stopped early do not escalate. They do not spread across system. They do not become headlines. That outcome is stopping it before it grows is the entire point, everything we have discussed today. Here is the framing I want you to take from this slide. These are not IT matrices, they are business risk matrices. When you present MTTR to your leadership team, you are not talking about a technical number, you are talking about how much of a breach your organization absorbed before you stopped it. So when you talk about false positive rate, you are talking about how much of your security budget is being spent on noise versus real protection. Speak the language of business, and these matrices becomes a very compelling story. So let's move forward to the next slide, that is challenges and consideration. Now we have covered the problem, the solution, and the impact. But I want to close with something that I think it equally important, right? An honest look at what makes this hard. Because any presentation that only shows you the upside is not preparing you actually to build this, right? There are three challenges, and for each one, there is a clear approach. So the first challenge is over automation risk. When organizations move too fast, automating responses before the underlying processes are solid, they create a different kind of problem. AI can take the wrong action with high confidence if the playbooks are poorly defined or the data it is working from is incomplete. So the right and the control is controlled automation. Start with responses that are well understood, low risk, and high frequency. Prove the system works before you expand its authority. Build incrementally, not all at once. So the second challenge is poor data quality. AI is only reliable as the data it runs on. If your logs are incomplete, your signals are very noisy, or your context is missing. So the AI will make confident decision based on the bad input. That combination, high confidence, wrong conclusion, is more dangerous than no automation at all. So the right approach is continuous tuning. Treat your data pipeline as a living system, not a one-step setup. Build regular review cycles and feedbacks loop into your process. Every false positive in information. It's not just false positive. Use it to improve the model, not just close the ticket. The third challenge is, and often the most underestimated, is trust and adaptation. This one is very important. Your analyst may feel uncertain about what AI means for their role. Will it replace them? Will it make decisions they agree with? If this is not addressed correctly, it became a barrier to adaptation that slows down everything. So the right approach for this is both are essential. Neither replaces the other. When your team understand this, they become advocates, not registers. Some key takeaways, which brings me to the three things I want to take away from this entire session. So the first one is start controlled. Automate what you understand well and expand from proven wins, not just assumptions. Tune continuously. AI performance is not static. It depends on the quality of data and the feedback you give it. Build that loop from day one. Keep humans central. The goal is not maximum automation like we talked earlier. The goal is intelligent, controlled automation, where AI amplifies your team without removing the human judgment, and that makes it trustworthy. That is where AI delivers real value in security operation, not as a replacement or as an escalator. So feel free to ask any question or share your thoughts. I will be happy to discuss.
Vaibhav, can you please tell us the name of the tool which were you were initially using to show us the the,
The demo.
yeah.
That was not the tool, that was our company's AI agent we are using for the demo, which we integrated with our tool, the same tool.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vaibhav. It was very insightful session.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining. Really appreciate your time. That's all from my side. If you like to connect or discuss anything, feel free to reach out. My details are here. Would be great to stay in touch with you. Thank you all again.
Thank you, Vaibhav.